Hey everybody, this is Niclas Huschenbeth and this is my analysis of my game against FIDE master Andy Lee from the Golden State Open 2016. I just finished this tournament last week. It was in San Francisco and this is round number 4. It was an absolutely wild game and I would like to present it to you right now. So let's go ahead and go through the first moves. E4, by the way, I played against Andy Lee also in the 2015 edition of the Golden State Open, and back then I played the Najdorf, so the C5 right here, but I want to surprise him a little bit and I played the French, which I recently added to my repertoire and it's quite interesting. So let's see what happens here. Knight C3, Bishop B4. I had seen he had played all of that before, of course, this is one of the main lines. But here he surprised me. I really expect him to go a3, which is the main move, but instead he played the sideline queen g4. And I had seen he had done that before, and I had a brief look because I really didn't expect him to do it again. So I played knight e7. He took on c5, all of that I had seen before. But here I only expected bishop d2, which I believe is the main move. And he blitzed out queen takes g7 right away. And at this point I was a little bit worried because he's entering sharp variations. Obviously he takes on g7. I had no familiarity with this move. I play rook g8 and he takes on h7 and he's 3 pawns up right now. Right? He is taking 3 of my pawns. And on the other hand, I knew that if I had not analyzed this move, or if that move wasn't in my database, that must have meant something shouldn't be quite right with this variation. But you know, on the board you still have to figure it out. But it seemed rather obvious to me that I have to go for the forced lines here, which is to play d4 and make use of the fact that this knight is pinned and attacking with the pawn. But he was still blitzing out the move, so I knew something must coming at some point. And I was quite scared because if you enter such a sharp line and your opponent is just playing all the moves so quickly, you of course are worried that you are entering some kind of deep opening preparation. Let's see. So a3 and now queen a5, pinning another pawn, the pawn a3, pinning another white piece. So obviously if white takes on b4, now I just take on a1. And I thought that can't be really what he wants to do. I take on b4. This looks really good for me. Knight f3, d3 is a strong move here. C takes d3 and queen b1, and white is in trouble. So instead he played rook b1, which I had seen, and I thought, okay, well, I'll just take on c3, right? Because if white takes now on b4, he will still lose the rook on b1. Nowhere for the rook to go, and also cannot be protected. It's gone. So I was expecting something to happen. I thought for a moment he wants to play b3, which actually doesn't even create a threat because if a takes b4, it's still queen a2. And here I can also just take on c5, play b4, and pin this one this time, the pawn on the b file, and black's just winning. But he blitzed out bishop e3, so he was still in his preparation here. And as he told me afterwards, he was following a recommendation of John Watson in one of his books, where he said this is a playable line. And I was quite shocked. Bishop e3, what's going on? Well, I took on b2, so we'll see this in a moment, but the other idea is if now bishop takes c5, then white plays b4, queen b6, and now white doesn't take with the pawn on c5, but with the bishop. So just bishop takes c5, and obviously white is doing really, really well, so I shouldn't do that. So I took on b2, which I believe is the most natural move, right? Just take on b2 with check. But in fact, right now white isn't really threatening anything. So the very natural, I guess, kind of natural development move, bishop d7, would have been strongest. And it shows me computers have pretty much refuted this line for white. Black is clearly better here in all variations. So if, for example, knight takes b4 just doesn't work out, queen a2, rook d1, knight takes b4, black is attacking, is ready to castle, everything's good for black here. Instead, knight e2 could be another move. And here, very useful move, rook g6, blocking out the queen from coming back to the king. And now, for example, queen h8 check, just knight g8, a takes b4 and knight takes b4. And again, black is having a tremendous attack against white here. So this is also really good. I guess the best way still for white to play is to play knight f3, and then black simply castles bishop d3. And now black finally takes on c5, and here just takes on b4. Because now black can also take back with the knight, and white has at least managed to bring his king into safety, but black takes on d3, plays bishop c6. This is again no good. White has to play queen c4 because there's also a threat of bishop takes f3. And here black has a variety of choice. Queen d5, queen c7. Black is very comfortable here. Clearly better. Alright, let's see what happened in the game. So I did take on b2. But now he takes on b4. And why does this all work? Where's the difference to the variations we saw before? Now, suddenly after queen a2, white is just in time to play c3 and protect everything. Protect the pawn on b4, as well as protect the rook on b1, the queen on h7. And if I now block out the queen, white simply brings out the bishop to d3, and the rook is defended. I'm not getting through. This is good for white. The other move I was obviously looking at was queen takes b4 check, but didn't like it too much. White just plays bishop d2, queen takes c5, and here I thought white would just bring back the queen, but also knight f3 is possible. Computer says it's equal. I personally didn't like it too much to play against the two bishops, and position's rather open, so wasn't really my kind of position. So I took with the knight, and this forces c3. Yeah, if bishop d2, now there's the difference. We'll see queen a2, c3, and now rook g6. And the problem now for white is obviously that bishop d3 isn't possible because the knight is covering the square, and the rook is gone on b1, and with that also white's position. So instead, he has to play c3, which he did. Once again, opening up the diagonal for the queen to retreat. And when I calculated this position, I looked at the move rook g6, which I played, and it is indeed the strongest move in the position. We have seen this idea before, to block out the queen from coming back to help secure the king and also the rook on b1. And I looked at this and I thought, well, probably white has to go for queen h8 check here, and then at least I can repeat moves, which didn't seem too bad for me, coming from the fact that I was out prepared in the opening, kind of, right? You have to remember, up until c3, my opponent blitzed out all the moves. My opponent actually took on b4, which is a mistake, and after that he's losing, in fact. So queen h8 is the best move. Rook g8 is possible. That would lead to repetition of moves, but a better try is knight g8. And now white has to play quite precisely. White has to play queen h4. If queen h5, also to bring the queen back. Now there's another threat in the position, which is also quite annoying for white. The move knight c2 check, forcing a king to move, so white loses the right to castle. And now knight takes e3, destroying white's pawn structure even further. And now just bishop d7, castling, and the king on d2 is just a mess, right? And all the pawns are weak, so this is terrible for white. But queen h4 is better because, for one, the queen also aims to come back, but also white is preventing black from castling. And that makes a big difference, because if the black king isn't safe either, then, well, white has some chances. And here I actually thought there was a really beautiful line. I just want to show you real quick, but unfortunately it doesn't quite work. The line goes like this: queen a2, And now if white plays queen e4, which looks like the natural move, right, to protect the rook. Let's make this a green arrow. Then rook g4, distraction. Queen can't take, then the rook falls and black will queen the pawn on b2. So f4, right? And now it seems like white has defended everything. But no, f5. I thought it was so gorgeous, this move, f5 here. And just white can't keep it together anymore. All squares on this diagonal are covered. I don't know what's going on here. All squares are covered. Right? We see this is covered, this is covered, this is covered. Like all the pieces are involved. It's pretty cool, I think. But unfortunately that doesn't work. Because instead of playing queen e4, white can play bishop b5 check here. And it's an annoying check to answer. If bishop d7, then white takes and can bring the queen back to d1. I actually play queen e4 here, queen e4, threatening queen takes b7. And if king f8, then white brings back the queen to d1 through this route and saves the game. Saves position is actually better here. That's always the thing. If white is able to defend against all the threats, then suddenly he might easily be better. So instead of going for this line with queen a2 in this position, it's better to go for the other option, the other threat, which is knight c2. Once again, crippling the white pawn structure. But in this case, it's not as clear because, like I said, black is not able to castle as easily. Now bishop d7, also queen can come to the queen side to help defend. And the position is actually just about equal here, even though personally, I would still rather take black. Because just the king is a little safer and it seems still unpleasant for white, but objectively speaking, it's about equal. Let's return to the game. My opponent took on b4, queen takes b4, and he played king d1, which I was really surprised with. I thought he wanted to maybe get a draw somehow here, and I really only expect king e2. Bishop d2, by the way, doesn't work because of queen e4 picking up the rook. So let's have a look at king e2. So the draw here in this position is queen c4, and then, well, king d2, queen b4, and king back, right? King c2 doesn't work because just bishop d7, rook takes b2, bishop a4 check, king b1, and I collect the bishop on f1, and yeah, this is just hopeless for white. So that would be a draw if I repeated moves here like that, but I don't have to, and I actually want to take a look at this position and see if I can play bishop d7. And in fact, this is just winning, and I'm pretty sure I would have figured it out on the board as well. So white has to create some space for the king. Bishop b5 is a very strong threat. So two moves that come to mind are f3 and f4. After f3, the quiet move queen c3 is incredibly strong. Just a threat queen c2 is indefendable, and black wins on the spot. So f4, the difference is here, if now queen c3, which is also winning, but here white still has the defensive resource to bring the knight to d2 and defend the rook on b1. So instead, bishop b5 check, king f2, and just bishop takes f1. Very simple, right? Rook takes b1, rook takes f1, b1 queen wins, and king takes f1, queen c4 check. It's a very sneaky check, and knight d2, and now queen e4, double attack, and it's just falling apart. So white is lost. So king d1, but I was just still very surprised because I thought, what is my opponent's plan? He cannot seriously think that he's going to survive this position. I mean, look at this position. The bishop is coming, I'm ready to castle, his queen is out of play, and I have a strong pawn on b2. This is just too much, right? This is just way too much compensation for piece sacrifice. This intuitively, for me, felt like it must be completely gone. And it is. It is completely gone, indeed. So my opponent found the only moves to kind of stay in the game, even though it doesn't change the evaluation of the position. So bishop d3, I can just ignore that the rook is hanging on g6. I just castle because if bishop takes g6, bishop b5 just ends the game on the spot. Bishop d3, just rook takes d3, bishop takes d3, it doesn't matter. And king e2, which is the natural move you would like to play, but it runs into bishop b5, just exchanging this very important light square bishop. And whenever a light square bishop is gone, white is so incredibly weak on the light squares. It's just completely hopeless as well. Here queen takes b5, and here are many ways to win, but queen d3 seems very simple. Just hit the rook, and if rook takes b2, then queen d5 check leads to a checkmate in a few moves. King e2, queen d1, and king f4, queen c4 check, king f3, and queen g4 checkmate. All right. My opponent found the best response here, played bishop d2, and now queen g4 check. Bishop a4 is also possible, but here king e1 is a very important move, so not king e2, queen g4, which would transpose to what we see in the game, but king e1, so I don't have any check, and here queen d4 would be a mistake. Then white plays queen h3, and suddenly it's not that clear. Instead, queen b3 is very strong, and black can even give the whole rook. White is so weak on the light squares, as well as having to deal with this strong pawn on b2, that white is just lost here. But that was too complicated, and I saw this move, queen g4 check, and I really liked it. Okay, so knight f3. If king e1, just queen takes g2. Just pick up the rook on h1. If knight e2, I want to play bishop a4 check, which is also winning, but bishop b5 is actually really nice. And the point is, after bishop takes b5, queen b4 is very unfortunate for white. Just no sensible way to defend against the checkmate on d2. My opponent played knight f3. Now bishop a4 check. I also thought about queen takes g2, and this is also winning. King e2 and bishop c6, and once again white is just hopelessly weakened on the light squares. Queen takes f7, and once again the queen is blocked out of defending the king, or the pieces near to the king, and that's it. But I like bishop a4. King e2 and rook takes d3. However, I have to say I missed my opponent's move here, which is queen h4. And would have been better if I saw it, but in the end it doesn't make a difference. Black's still completely winning. If white takes on d3, then queen f5 check is the crucial move, and king e2, bishop b5 check, and that's it. If the king goes to the first rank, queen takes b1. If the king goes to e3, it will be checkmate soon. And well, if king d4, just rook g4. For example, pick up the queen, and we can stop our calculations here. Alright, but queen h4 is the best try. And here I play bishop b5, which is good and fine. But I do want to show you queen takes g2, which I disregarded because of knight e1. But in fact, black has a really nice quiet move here. Queen takes h1, I think wouldn't be as clear. And here white takes on a4, and you know, there are all kinds of threats, and the white knight is really keeping the white position together. They say the knight is the best friend of the king, and this is certainly true here. So I didn't feel like doing this. This seems rather messy and unnecessary. But instead, a move that I didn't see was just queen d5. Just give up the whole rook on d3, just play bishop b5, and this once again emphasizes this point that I've made several times throughout the video. White is just hopelessly weakened on the light squares. yeah, there's just no way to defend the knight. Queen h3, just queen e4 check, queen e3 and bishop takes, and everything's dropping, right? Okay. Let's see the game. Bishop b5. Now I allow queen exchange, but my position remains absolutely dominating because there's this threat of moving the rook somewhere. And I still have this pawn on b2. And actually, just for fun, let's see if you can figure out a checkmate in 2 here for black. There's a checkmate in 2 moves. Let's see if you can find it. So if you want to, just stop the video right now and check if you can find a checkmate in 2. It's really nice. Rook e3. King takes e3, knight d5 or knight f5, whatever you like better. And king d1, bishop a4 is also checkmate. So, of course, my opponent moved out of this diagonal, played king d1, and now simply rook b3, defending the pawn on b2. And white, it's just all passive pieces, and I have pretty much all active pieces, and I'm not even down any material, right? The material is completely equal. Knight e1, and now there's several ways to win. I like rook d4, pinning the bishop, and now knight c2. And now just drop back with the rook d8, threatening rook bd3, picking up the bishop on d2. He played knight e1 back, and now bishop c6. I first want to go something like a5, I believe, but bishop c6 I notice is very strong because the only way to deal with this threat, bishop e4, is to play f3, what he did, and now knight f5. And because he moved his pawn on f2, now this square has opened up, and this is just a very strong threat, nothing to do against knight e3, followed by bishop b5. King e2 also just bishop b5 check. And it's actually interesting, I don't know how many games I had where I ended on completely equal material. We see 5 pawns against 5 pawns, and everything's equal, but just all my pieces are active, like I said before, and all the white pieces are passive, and it won't take long until the material balance is disturbed here in black's favor. Alright, that was my game that I want to show you. The French really turned into a sharp battle. I was surprised by his opening preparation, but I found this important move, rook g6, and then he accepted sacrifice, and from there was just all me pretty much, just bringing out my pieces, and it felt good. It was a lot of fun. I hope you also had fun watching this video, and then I'll see you again some other time. Goodbye.